Hello, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel recalls its envoy to UNESCO. The Jewish state presents 2,700-year-old proof of its claims to Jerusalem, and Israel stands by the U.S. in a major UN vote. I'm Natasha Kirchuk here with the latest news in Israel. The Jewish state is reacting to the passage of yet another anti-Israel resolution by UNESCO with a combination of disgust and disappointment, but also a bit of optimism. Israel's envoy to the UN Cultural Agency has just been recalled for consultations.
ואני החלטתי לפיכך להזמין לארץ להתייעצויות את השגריר שלנו באונסקו, ואנחנו נחליט מה לעשות, מה יהיו הצעדים שלנו.
Both of the bills approved in the last week completely deny any Jewish or Christian historical ties to Jerusalem's holiest sites. They also refer to the Temple Mount exclusively by its Arabic names and only as a Muslim area of worship. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is slamming the UN for conducting a theater of the absurd.
הנה איגרת מהעבר לאונסקו. שמסביר את הקשר שלנו בעברית לירושלים ומרכזיותה של ירושלים. אחת מהפקידות של המלך, ודאי מלך יהודה. זה לפני 2,700 שנה.
Yet the Israeli leader claims that yesterday's vote was somewhat of a diplomatic triumph for Israel, because far fewer members approved the measure than in the past. Knesset member Yuli Edelstein has appealed to the Vatican for help in preventing the recurrence of further developments of this sort, which he's describing as a deeply offensive assault on Jewish and Christian history, as recorded in both the Old and New Testaments of the Bible. Yesterday, Pope Francis gave a speech outside the Vatican, seen as affirming the connection between the Jewish people and the land of Israel. Meanwhile, Israel's UNESCO ambassador has submitted a petition signed by more than 77,000 Jews and Christians, demanding UNESCO recognize the ties of their faiths to Jerusalem. Israeli leaders from across the political spectrum are condemning the newest resolution, and Israeli opposition leader Isaac Herzog is even saying its adoption amounts to blood libel against Israelis. One of the world's most ancient delivery receipts has just come to light, and this little scrap of papyrus carries an awful lot of weight. It's not only the oldest known mention of Jerusalem in Hebrew, but it also serves as Israel's perfect rebuttal to UNESCO with historical documented proof of Judaism's links to the Holy City. Radiocarbon dating has determined that this fragile 4.3 by 1 inch text dates back to the 7th century before the Common Era. That means it's several centuries older than the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Hebrew writing even says from the female servant of the king in Naharata, which was a place near Jericho, 2 wineskins to Jerusalem. During their presentation of the note, Israeli archaeologists explained its critical importance.
The significance of this document, first of all, this is the first time that Jerusalem is mentioning in a script outside of the Bible. This is the ancient Hebrew script that Jerusalem is mentioned with. This is from the First Temple period, and it emphasizes the centrality of Jerusalem as the capital city of the Kingdom of Judah, and it also shows us, or we can understand from that, the administration, the organized administration of the Kingdom of Judea during that period.
The papyrus was plundered by antiquities thieves from a cave in the Judean desert. The Israeli Antiquities Authority has been conducting as many rescue excavations in the remote area as possible, in a race to discover any remaining artifacts before they forever disappear.
We caught the document, we also caught the group of looters, and afterwards we continued with this operation because we understood that there are few others, groups of looters, Palestinian group of looters, who are stealing our national heritage in the Judean desert.
Israel's friends are now hoping that this latest historical treasure will help to shine even more light onto the documented Jewish presence in the land over the past 3,000 years, in a bid to further dispel the darkness cast by international ignorance. In other UN-related news, Israel is standing by its strongest ally, the United States, by this time abstaining from a resolution that condemns America's economic embargo against Cuba. Sounds confusing, right? Well, improving relations between the United States and Cuba are making the U.S. reconsider its isolation of the Cuban government and its own embargo against the country. This is the first time in 25 years that both countries refrained from opposing the draft. The change in stance comes as part of the new approach adopted toward the communist island nation by the Obama White House. The two governments restored diplomatic relations in 2015, which had been severed in 1961 amid Cold War tensions.
For more than 50 years, the United States had a policy aimed at isolating the government of Cuba. For roughly half of those years, UN member states have voted overwhelmingly for a General Assembly resolution that condemns the U.S. embargo and calls for it to be ended. The United States has always voted against this resolution. Today, the United States will abstain.
U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Samantha Power made it clear that there are still outstanding concerns that need to be addressed.
Abstaining on this resolution does not mean that the United States agrees with all of the policies and practices of the Cuban government. We do not. We are profoundly concerned by the serious human rights violations that the Cuban government continues to commit with impunity against its own people, including arbitrarily detaining those who criticize the government, threatening, intimidating, and at times physically assaulting citizens who take part in peaceful marches and meetings, and severely restricting the access that people on the island have to outside information. As President Obama made clear when he traveled to Havana, we believe that the Cuban people, like all people, are entitled to basic human rights, such as the right to speak their minds without fear, and the right to assemble, organize, and protest peacefully.
Cuba is still demanding the blockade against it be lifted entirely, but has welcomed Washington's latest gesture.
El cambio de voto que la embajadora Samantha Power acaba de anunciar es una señal promisoria. Tenemos la esperanza de que se refleje en la realidad.
Israeli ambassador to the UN Dani Danan announced the Jewish state would mirror the shift in solidarity with Washington, and the final vote on the matter was 191 in favor, with just those 2 abstentions. That reflects what's happened up until now. Last year, for example, support for the annual UN measure was 191 to 2, with Israel once again the lone nation standing by the United States. The 2016 U.S. presidential election has been one for the history books, and the journey isn't over yet. In 2 weeks, the citizens of the United States will have to make a choice between Hillary Clinton, the former First Lady, Senator, and Secretary of State, or Donald Trump, a career business mogul, developer, and political outsider. The campaign has certainly been a muddy one, and both candidates have had plenty of their skeletons revealed. So today we invite Ariel Iluz, a Republican Party consultant with Republicans Overseas Israel, to tell us more about the candidates from his point of view. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you.
So, to begin, Trump beat out 16 other candidates and he rose with ease. Now, we're seeing something changing. Hillary Clinton is pulling ahead by 14 points, but Trump's behavior really hasn't changed since the beginning of his career as a candidate. Why do you think Trump is losing popularity now?
Actually, if we're talking about the last week, I don't think he's losing popularity, because we can see that every day Hillary Clinton is losing popularity, and what's happened now that it's like the people are beginning to understand that they're smarter than the media. So I don't think that this is the right to say that.
Okay, well, let's talk about the issues a little bit. We'll move on from the polls because they are changing every day. Now, Hillary Clinton charged that terrorists around the world are praying for a Trump victory. Now, there are still allegations against the Trump camp working closely with Russian President Vladimir Putin. There's ongoing lawsuits that Trump is involved in, a lot of alleged abuses from shady business deals, and obviously sexual assaults. Why should anybody trust this type of candidate, in your opinion?
Because I don't think that this is the right question, if can we trust him. Because if you ask the same question about Hillary Clinton, so you can say the same thing, but Hillary Clinton have background of 30 years of career, political career, and she didn't succeed to say all the things that now she promised. So I think that Donald Trump represents something that the American needs. And of course, he won 16 other Republicans, and I think that now the American start to understand that maybe this part of his personality, this is the only part that can really shake up the system. That's what the American, I think, in Israeli eyes, needs.
Interesting. Well, I had a question later that I was going to ask about kind of his temperament, his presidential temperament, but we'll get to that later. Let's turn to Israel and the issues that are more specific on the ground. How does Donald Trump's plan for Israel, Syria, the Middle East as a whole differ from Hillary Clinton's plan?
All right, so it's totally different than the Democrats, because Donald Trump, just like his businesses, he believes that he needs to make the business strong. That's why I think he chose this slogan, Make America Great Again, because a great America is a great Israel. And for me, as Israeli, I can see the Israeli interest in this election. I can talk about the American issues, but I'm not American. So for me, it's very important that the next president of the United States will be a real friend of Israel. If we will see the last years, we can start in 1996. Benjamin Netanyahu won, and he didn't work with a right-wing administration. And the next time he won, he didn't work with a right-wing administration too. And the first time it was Bill Clinton, the second time it was Barack Obama. And I think now the people in Israel are not just deserve for a good relationship between the leaders, they deserve for someone who will promise and will do. And there is something in Donald Trump that people say maybe it's not just words like Hillary Clinton. Maybe he will do, because for me, and in Israel there is a housing crisis. I'm a young guy. People like me would love to buy an apartment in Israel, in Jerusalem, or in South Jerusalem, in Gilo neighborhood, or in Har Homa, or next to Jerusalem, Ma'ale Adumim, and we can't. And we can't buy, and it's not because our Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. We can't because the last time that Benjamin Netanyahu confirmed to the people to build a balcony in Gilo, so Hillary Clinton was scream and shout, because she see Gilo as an illegal settlement. And maybe she see the entire Jerusalem as an illegal settlement because the embassy is still not in Jerusalem. So for me, it's very important that there is someone who say, I will move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. This is the basic thing between a relationship between leaders. Like, this is your right to choose what city is your capital.
Now, what are you guys saying to both American Jews and Israeli Jews who are concerned about a growing population of Trump supporters that, clearly support anti-Semitic rhetoric?
I don't think that there is a connection. I think that this is something that they say to make us think that there is a connection, but no, it's a right wing. You can say it in Europe also, because there is a right-wing parties in Europe, in Austria, and in Germany, and I don't see the connection between those things. And by the way, how can someone think that he's an anti-Semitic when his daughter became Jewish, now convert and change their name, and his grandchildren?
Well, I mean, the issue is that he's depending on voters who come from this background, who are supporting anti-Semitic libel.
No one have control on his voters. Of course, everyone can vote for Donald Trump. I think, and I believe, and I think that it's been proved that Donald Trump loved the Jewish tradition. He said that, by the way, yesterday. He sent blessed him and Mike Pence, and he said that he loved Israel. He loved the Jewish people. So no one can control the voters.
Now, let's talk about voting day. It's just around the corner. What do you think Trump can and should be doing here on the ground in Israel to get more Israeli Americans to vote for him? And how many voters do you think he already has supporting him from here?
So I can't tell the numbers, but I think the majority of Israeli, there is, by the way, more than 300,000 people in Israel who can vote. So my job or our job in the Republican Overseas Israel is to make that the people who have the right to vote to the right. So I really hope that Donald Trump will continue with this way to show his love to Israel and to show the connection between the states. I think that the Israelis are understand because those are the same Israelis that a year or 2 years ago just voted for the right wing in Israel. So I think in Israel it's more easy, but the problem is not in Israel, the problem is the swing state now.
All right, well, thank you so much for coming in. I guess we're going to see what happens.
Thank you very much, Natasha.
Africa is ripe for a new era of relations with Israel. That's at least the view of the International Christian Embassy's emissary to Africa, Reverend Juha Ketola. The Reverend told ILTV's Steve Leibowitz that swaying Africa to Israel's side could break the Arab Islamic grip on regional voting blocs at the UN.
Juha Ketola, Israel, recently the Prime Minister of Israel went on a visit to several African countries. Is this helping to swing opinion in Africa towards more understanding for Israel?
Definitely, for sure. And that is for the reason that it's already been existing in Africa. This is something that already was there. Now the Prime Minister of the State of Israel went there and released it. So this is what we have been telling all across maybe the 4 or 5 years.
Well, there was a golden time back when Israel was first established and through the 60s and I guess until the Six-Day War, and then things changed, or after the 73 war?
Yes, because of the African nations, you know, their general opinions, they put pressure on the individual nations to do that, to cut ties with Israel, yes.
Is it because they were influenced by Arab nations to cut their ties with Israel, or was it because of their own political ideas?
Money. Money.
How do you mean?
The Arab nations had the money. So with the money, that was pressured.
So what does Israel today have to offer to the African nations? We're not giving out cash money like the Arab nations. What can Israel provide to Africa?
Israel has unique resources. You know, the nation of Israel is, especially concerning Africa, they are right there, the right partner with Africa, because of the drought in Africa, because of the need for the agricultural development. And Israel has, for example, the dripping irrigation system and all those things that can really, really help Africans. And Africa will be a powerful continent in the near future.
Africa is, some years down the road, will become the largest population in the world. It also has, over 50 countries who all vote in world bodies, United Nations and others. Could you see a time when African nations are voting on the side of Israel on things like the UNESCO vote?
Yes, we believe this is actually the moment. It's absolutely the right time for the Prime Minister to visit Africa. I personally visited the West Africa the last 4 years several times, and I've met with the senior ministers of the government, and I can see the willingness for them to get connected with Israel. Even the Muslim nations are expressing their desire to get re-established with their diplomatic relationship with Israel, and that means that when the time comes in the UN to cast their votes, they are casting for Israel and not against. I can see that time coming. Yes.
So we had this visit from Prime Minister Netanyahu some months ago. What does Israel have to do to keep that trend moving in a positive direction?
I believe they need to. We are not representing the government of Israel. I have to be clear on that. But when you ask me, I can tell you my opinion. So I believe Israel should move in 2 levels. They should be very active in the diplomatic relationships, also approaching the Muslim countries, even the countries that do not at the moment have diplomatic relationship with Israel, because the openness is there. And then
Even from Muslim countries.
even and specifically including Muslim countries, yes.
So these are Muslims who are not jihadists. These are Muslims who are not radical. These are Muslims because that's their faith, but they are people who are open politically.
Correct, because to my experience, the expression of the Muslim religion in Africa is different than the expression of the Muslim religion in the Middle East. They want to live, many of the Muslims want to live alongside with the Jewish people and also with the Christians. And concerning these Muslim nations that I'm talking about, they do not want anything of the jihadists, anything of the violence. They reject it very purposefully and very determined. They want nothing of it in their country. They want peace, so that all these three religions are living in peace.
From what you can speak of, has Israel been helping them to keep out jihadists in any way?
Israel, in many countries, Israel has been helping them, yes.
In what ways?
Behind the scenes and with the security and all that.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time. Good luck with your efforts.
Thank you.
One of Israel's greatest forms of public relations is the country's unique music. And starting next week, Americans across the United States will have the chance to see one of the Holy Land's most famous musicians perform live. Let's check it out.
There are a special few Israeli musicians that have had a profound impact on the music industry in Israel, and one of them happens to be Yehuda Poliker. His career has spanned over 4 decades, and the singer, songwriter, guitarist, and painter has changed the face of rock in the Holy Land by adding a taste of his own background.
The Greek says, "What are you?" I'm Elinas. Elinas, it's Greek.
Okay.
And I am Israelinas.
Israelinas.
Elinas is Greek.
Yeah, Israeli Greek. Evanti.
Israelinas. I didn't speak Greek because I didn't want. I said, my father said to me, learn to speak Greek. I said, no, I'm Israeli, I don't want. I decided to do Greek music, and my manager said, never. But I said, there is another Greek music that you don't know. He said, no Greek music. And suddenly one day, I make an ambush. We put one song, Mimu Simon Ishmat Yamo, the lead song of the album. He said, what's this? My manager, what is this? This is Greek music. I said, wow. And after that, we decided to do the Greek music.
And believe me when I tell you, Yehuda himself is even more impressive than his award-winning music.
With thousands of people lining up behind us to hear Yehuda Poliker's catchy Greek Israeli tunes, it can be hard to imagine that much of his music is actually influenced by a tragic family history.
Both of Poliker's parents were Jewish Holocaust survivors from Thessaloniki, Greece.
My father, they took all his family to Auschwitz, and he stays alone from all his family. And when he got to Israel, he came to Israel, we are the only family that he has. Because I love my father, I wanted to help him, so I tried to take his pain out. But I got it in me.
Poliker has made it his mission to incorporate that pain, his history, and the history of the Jewish people into his music.
We touch the roots of us, and then if you touch the roots, you must touch the ashes and dust, the Holocaust.
Now, while it might sound like Poliker's music is on the slower, darker side, don't get me wrong. The Israeli musician has found a way to harness his pain into joyous rock music. And believe me when I say it's hard to stay still at his concerts. So if you're looking for a direct connection to Israel through its musical form, it may be time to buy tickets to one of Poliker's next concerts. The star performer will be on a tour in the United States from October 29th to November 6th. And if you've never heard his music before and are wondering what to expect, you should be excited.
If they don't know, they will ever get rock and roll to the face, and it's good.
So no matter what, they're going to have to enjoy it.
We're going to have fun.
For more information about Yehuda Poliker's upcoming American concerts, go to www.yehudapoliker.co.il.
And now for the Hebrew word of the day. The great Warren Buffett has always said, do not save what is left after spending, but spend what is left after saving. So today's word is lachsoch, which means to save. Though Israel may be known as a land of milk and honey, over 60% of the country is actually made up of desert. This makes the efforts to lachsoch water, gas, and power all the more important, in a manner that will also lachsoch zman, or save time. You see, saving isn't just about money. You can lachsoch by using less plastic, save by carpooling, and you can even lachsoch by eating less meat. Make it your mission to lachsoch in a way that's good for the earth. Ultimately, it will help you lachsoch money, and trust us when we say the long-term impact will make a big difference. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast.
ILTV's weather forecast is sponsored by Adopt a Savta, taking care of Israel's lonely Holocaust survivors.
The weekend is here, but sunshine may be scarce. The whole weekend is projected to be fairly cloudy with a low of 69 degrees and a high of 83. There's a chance that there will be scattered rain and floods on Saturday, and by next week, the winter weather should finally be upon us. All right, everybody, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.84 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to check out our next update at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Thanks for watching, and see you tonight.